gegn góðlag. Nei, kannski ekki er eitthvað villust líka í þessu. En ef ég ít á endstream núna, þetta þá að byrja aftur? Þegar við bara láta þetta ganga. Svo sem. Það samt alveg gott að hafa chatið að gerst.
Veistu hvað gain access to use this feature?
Nei. Þetta eitthvað tengt minni þá nú? Kannski út af að það með hins að sjá. We're live. Yeah. All right, so welcome everyone, both here, the audience, our groups, and the ones who are joining in online. And thanks for tuning in to the Capstone presentations from the January of 2024 Iceland Green Program Group. But this beautiful group has been, in the last couple of days, introduced to renewable energy sources here in Iceland, as well as sustainability and innovation, alongside working on their Capstone projects. But for those who are not familiar with the Capstone project, it's essentially an entrepreneurial solution to any kind of real-world problems in sustainable development. And here, no idea is too big or crazy, and we have kind of encouraged all our groups to think outside the box and also be creative, which I think they certainly did. But yeah, so this is how it's going to work. We're going to have 4 groups presenting today, and each group consists of 4 to 5 people. Each group will have 15 minutes to present, and I will give a 5 and then 3 and then 1 minute warning to the group for kind of keeping you guys on the toes, so before the 15 minutes run out. And then after each presentation, we'll have 5 to 10 minutes for questions. And I, of course, encourage everyone here, as well as to those who are online, to ask some questions. But yeah, I think we can invite the first group up to the podium, which is Team Poseidon. So give them a clap. Woo. Here you go, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Wait a minute. Then we can see it. Do you want to do it rejig? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Today, we're going to be talking to you about a novel technology and conservation project solution that we've created for a Southern California location. Before we get into the details of the project, I'd like to give you a bit of background context as to where this idea germinated from. So we're here obviously talking about renewable energy. The impacts of climate change, we were pondering and considering about coastal erosion, how overexploitation of grasses, and it tends to be a global issue, unique to each geography, but with some common themes. To be specific within the project, we've narrowed it down to a location in California where we're definitely seeing dramatic instances of erosion. So obviously with climate change, one of the consequences we're seeing is more extreme weather, and that extreme weather brings along with it very powerful storms, flooding, as well as severe droughts, all of these contributing into more dramatic and drastic changes in soil conditions and instability in cliffs and that increasing rate of erosion. Another offshoot compounding factor, particularly with cliffside species, flora, and overexploitation that's been going on in the particular case study we've chosen, as well as development impacting that cliff stability. Finally, we all understand and fully accept that fossil fuel energy production is definitely a huge contributor to the rate of climate change. So in this instance, we want to look at creating a clean energy source that, in fact, gives back to the environment in more than one way. So what we're proposing is using a novel wave power technology. We've pinpointed a company in Australia, Wave Swell Energy, which has developed a unique unit called the UniWave 200. It's been piloted in Tasmania, was operating for more than a year, generating 200 kilowatts of electricity. It's essentially a complete wave-to-wire solution using oscillating water columns as the mechanical functionality. Benefits of this technology, there's no moving parts located in the water, so therefore we have improved mechanical lifetime expectancy of the equipment. Where we bring it into the coastal erosion issue is that you can actually we have a picture on the right-hand side is the test unit in Tasmania. On the left-hand side, you can modularize the units, link them up together, and essentially create a break wall protecting the coastline. Unique element with WSE, it's unidirectional, which is it separates them from other OWC technology. And in essence, wave energy is a wonderful form of renewable energy because it can provide you a baseload power to supplement when you have wind and solar as your other renewable energy portfolios. Touching into our golden circle, starting at the heart of why. So our issue, Newport Beach in Southern California, with its high population, is in an energy and resource crunch, and as well, because of its coastal location, experiencing erosion and habitat loss. So our approach then, how will we address the issue? So we are proposing as Poseidon Consulting, looking at a way of bridging hydropower technology for electricity generation in the context then of coastal conservation and restoration as one holistic solution. So we're proposing to offer consultation services to match between the technology provider, as WSE, and pinpointing specifically Newport Beach's primary utility company, with then the proposal that a fraction of that utility rate can be used to create a conservation and restoration fund that invests in coastal area reclamation. Handing it over to Darcy.
And this is our business model canvas, where we've laid everything out on one page, but we're going to go into details in the next couple of slides. We have our value proposition, which is a three-pronged benefit. We are offering renewable electricity generation from the wave power technology as a base load renewable energy resource. We are offering coastal or erosion protection with the breakwall technology being able to help prevent the waves from crashing up on the shores so much. We have the conservation funding model, which will offer a percentage of the utility rates to go back into investing into the restoration of the sea cliffs. The impact can be measured in multiple ways. We can demonstrate the megawatts of generation of energy that happens over time. We can directly measure the benefit of the breakwalls through the reduction or reversal of the beach erosion that occurs. And we can also either measure visually through tracking or with testing of soil conditions the benefit of the restoration that we are conducting. We have a customer value proposition for the utility company, which will be that they can bring in more customers through these measures of supplying the technology and hydropower plant itself, protecting the sea cliff erosion, the fact that it is a renewable energy source. They can market that a percentage of their profits will go towards this restoration and conservation, and the landowner and property protection from the erosion and on the coast will also be an added value for customers. The utility company will also gain a reliable baseload energy source that is renewable and more stability than wind and solar power, as they are known to fluctuate widely. The type of intervention that we are offering is a business development consulting firm. We are offering a matchmaking service to bring together the technology company and the utility companies and put this idea out there that they can work together and we can restore the coastline all at the same time. Our key activities are 4 steps. Number 1, we would partner with a technology company to establish a business development model. Number 2, we would propose to the Newport Beach utility company this project. We would then work with our subject matter expert team and the utility company to develop a conceptual study. And then we would work on engaging our stakeholders so that we can get input from the community that we would be working with.
Okay, and so we have several key resources that we will be utilizing. So the first one will be coming from our primary partner, the Waveswell Energy from Australia, as they will also be providing us with the seed funding for business development phase of our company. We will also be working with a team of subject matter experts under our umbrella of Poseidon Consulting. And those subject matter experts will be coming from hydropower, coastal engineering and management, restoration and conservation, and energy project permitting. So in addition to working with our primary partner, we have also some other partners, including local electrical utility providers. And specifically in Newport Beach area, we've identified Southern California Edison, who is the utility provider in that region. And our other partners include conservationists, botanists, and marine biologists. And of course, we also have our stakeholders, which include government permitting agencies, general public, and special interest groups and NGOs. So going into our segments, we have our customer who will be the utility company. They will be paying for this endeavor, and that would be considered kind of like our direct customer. And our indirect customers would include the utility company's customers who will be buying the electricity from them. And we have a few beneficiaries from this project. So we, of course, have the utility companies that we'll be working with, as they will be gaining potentially gaining more customers by providing a renewable energy source. And of course, we'll have homeowners and business owners in the region who will be benefiting from having an opportunity to use a renewable energy source. General population, and also through our restoration efforts of the sea cliff sides, we'll be maintaining the beauty of the region, and that will facilitate tourism to Newport Beach. And like we already mentioned, our service is a business model. We will be connecting with businesses that we'll be working with through various conferences in the spheres of marine conservation and renewable energy generation. And jumping into our cost structure, so we, in the beginning, will have very low overhead costs, which will be paying our core team member salaries, and also our team of experts. And in the future, as our company expands and potentially starts to work in different regions with different utility companies, we'll probably require a central hub, and also require travel costs, traveling to these different locations. And we will need funding for future research, looking into complementary technologies to broaden our portfolio of services. And we have our primary revenue source, which is selling our consulting services to the utilities. And then our secondary revenue source is the ongoing partnership with Water12 Energy Technology Company, where we'll be receiving a portion of their revenues.
And as for the surplus, just a quick note, with projects like these, it's hard to gain momentum, so it'll take some time to get a good idea of the surplus that we'll be gaining. But basically, we're going to propose to the utility company that a small % of the electrical rate goes directly towards sea cliff restoration and conservation projects. And this can be seen as like an advantage for the utility company because it attracts customers. And a portion of the profits specifically will be used towards replanting ethically sourced native dudleas to the cliff sides. So a key thing in conservation and restoration is promoting native habitats and wildlife. And dudleas are a native succulent to the cliffs of California, many of which are unfortunately critically endangered. And basically the benefit of these guys is their powerful and extensive root systems help to stabilize these cliff sides. And there's been a lot of poaching going on recently with the succulent trade, and because of that, their numbers have dropped like crazy, which causes a lot of erosion problems because they no longer have those extensive root systems holding them together. It's important to have measures in the future to make sure that poaching doesn't continue after we make all of these efforts. Some good news is that in 2021, the California Native Plant Society passed a law where basically if you're caught poaching these succulents, you can get fined up to $500,000 and serve 6 months in prison. And as for the sustainability complex, the main two groups that this is going to be benefiting is going to be on the city level and the community and neighborhood level. As for the city, it's providing renewable energy, it's reliable, and then also we're creating a new energy source without taking up additional land resources. And for the community and neighborhood, basically just restoring these sea cliffs just benefits everyone in the neighborhood. And then for our sustainable development goals, our main ones for this project are the affordable and clean energy, sustainable cities and communities, climate action, and life below water and on land. And yeah, thanks for listening.
Thank you so much. This was great. Do we have any questions from you guys already? Yeah, Megan? I will have to bring this all the way to you. Here you go.
So I think it said that each unit of the wave technology is 200 megawatt. That's like the rating. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Because it looked, like size-wise, it didn't look ginormous. So I was wondering if you guys knew like how large that unit is. That was a 200 kilowatt. Okay. Yeah. And then like, I guess, do you guys know like the area of it or anything like that?
So the dimensions, going back to that picture. So this one, it's actually, if I think back to, it's towable. I mean, the size, I'd put it on like a 10 meter by 30 meter type of footprint is the one. And then, but then you get also like a relative scale, like so on the sailboats to one of the, if it's in a break wall. So the standalone unit was probably like a little bit of a bigger footprint, but then you can like streamline into the building block style that way. So again, that customizable for geographies and locations for how you want to set the farm up. So any other questions?
So is the native plant species that you would be like planting / protecting, is it like indigenous to all of the California coast, or is this more specific to Newport Beach in Southern California?
So Dudleya it's the genus, and there are like various species that vary like region to region throughout California. And that's where the botanists would come in to this project. They would help us figure out basically which species exactly is native to Newport Beach. Yeah, good question.
Any other questions from you guys? Okay, I have a question from Jake online. And he said, firstly, you had a great presentation, and it's clear you've put thought and effort into this. But I want to ask about social impact. How do you think wave energy projects compare to other renewable energy installations, especially in terms of visual impact to the local community and area?
Yeah, definitely. So in our fourth step in our plan is community engagement. And so this project would not go forward if the community disagrees with the installation of these barriers. But you also have to keep in mind that a lot of the kind of beaches already do have some structures that serve as sea wave breaking points. And so this could actually be installed in place of that. So in terms of visual impact, you know, it could be mitigated that way. But yes, it's a valid concern, and that's something that, you know, we would need to address.
Okay, yeah, he added something, but you guys answered the question. Yeah, I think, does anyone else have a question? Yeah, I'm just, I think it's an awesome project. I was just wondering about like the company in Australia, how you're gonna get them involved, and have you thought about like how to kind of, I don't know, get the stakeholders into this kind of project with you, and do you think it's gonna be easy or difficult?
So yeah, this whole idea depends on our partnership with the technology company. So you know, there are several ways that we will be enticing them to collaborate with us. One of which includes a continual percentage of profits going to them as owners of kind of the technology and the idea. But yeah, I mean, you know, stakeholders, like I said earlier, like obviously there are a lot of moving parts, as you probably saw. And definitely, you know, it would be a very long kind of beginning stage for everything to take off. And if it does, it would be great. But, you know, also we were talking that in the case that Newport Beach is not on board with this project, there are other areas that even in California are experiencing, you know, cliff erosion issues. But California would be a kind of like a better market to enter because of the income of the communities that might be willing to deal with the visual impact and initial investment if they are able to get access to renewable energy.
We had also talked about getting something like the Bill Gates Foundation or something similar to that on board as a stakeholder to be able to start the business up.
Thank you guys so much. Let's give it up for them one more time. All right, so I think it's time just to invite the next group up to the stage, which is Team Beavers. Whoop.
All right. Hello, everybody. Like we were introduced, we are Team Beavers, and this is our project, the Kanji Hydroelectric Dam and Wastewater Treatment. And as a little bit of a preface, this is this would be targeted towards a federal government as a suggestion, and the federal government would be in Nigeria. So our location is Lagos, Nigeria in Africa. And a little bit of background about Lagos. Lagos has a population of nearly 16 million people, and only 15% of those residents have access to adequate sanitation services. And this is highly due to a lack in infrastructure surrounding sewage treatment and plumbing. And also only 55% of these people have access to clean water, with 10% of those people having it directly to their homes. So what are we trying to accomplish with this project? The goals of this project are to provide sanitary and sustainable recycling of waste while generating new renewable energy from toxic wastewater. And we do this ultimately to produce clean drinking water for the residents of Lagos. So how will this project work? As you can see up here, we plan on implementing public toilets such as outhouses that would ultimately collect sewage for the area, which would be picked up and transported to the Kanji Dam, which has an already attached hydroelectric facility. So this facility would process this sewage, and the power that is produced from this would go towards the Lagos State Water Corporation, which has a sewage treatment facility nearby downstream that would be able to treat the sewage and turn it into usable fresh water. And we would pump this fresh water to public faucets due to their lack of piping to people's homes. So we would have locations around the city in high population density areas that people could go to get their fresh water. So why is this project important? An increase in access to sanitary restrooms will help to reduce the spread of diseases and illnesses, and this will ultimately be able to also increase access to clean and convenient drinking water, which will also be able to help prevent sicknesses and improve quality of life for people in Lagos. And this increased power production due to extra input from the sewage will be able to lighten the need for importing electricity into the country. And all of this is going to improve sanitation and water access issues through a mostly renewable energy cycle. So why did we choose Lagos out of all these other places in Africa? Well, mostly a lot of these places have very similar issues to Lagos, so this could be used there. But the reason we chose Lagos specifically is due to the geography and their facilities that they already have established there. Using these already established facilities allow us to cut out a lot of the cost that might be needed to establish facilities such as a hydroelectric plant, a dam, that kind of thing. So another benefit of this area is the hydroelectric plant is upstream from the water treatment facility, and this means that we can use a gravity-based piping system to get the sewage from the hydroelectric plant to the water treatment facility without having to use electricity to pump it there. And the water treatment facility is also right next to the city, so when we build our pipes to the public faucets, it'll be much less costly.
All right, so diving into the mechanical operation of our project, So step, I guess, more or less 0 would be creating a reservoir at Kanji Dam separate from the existing reservoir to keep the sewage water that we're transporting up there separate from the already reserved water, not to, further increase the amount of sewage water they have there. And then after it's been transported to the Kanji Dam, we will have a set of 4 Pelton turbines that will be connected to our reservoir that will be pumped through, pressurized through nozzles to power those turbines. And then after the water funneled in those turbines falls, the wastewater will be moved through a set of special pipes down to the Lagos State Wastewater Treatment Plant to clean them and make them into potable water. So the required capital for this project is a little more extensive. So the pipes would need to be created with a duplex steel and an interior ceramic coating to be able to resist the corrosiveness of the sewage plant water, as it's going to be full of a lot of human waste, which has a lot of acid. And then our 4 Pelton turbines would be 35 megawatts apiece, so it add 140 megawatts to the dam's power currently, as it's using 8 of its 12 turbines, and it has room for 4 more. 3 nozzles on each turbine would give it the proper momentum it needs to produce this power. And then the reservoir we're planning to create would be hopefully 25 kilometers cubed to have a sufficient storage spot for all the sewage coming up from Lagos. And then we would also need to look into training some more skilled individuals in working at the dam, and then untrained labor for collecting the waste in our disposable systems. Now moving back to Lagos, the new potable water will be returned to the community of Lagos through a series, as Ashton mentioned, series of pipes in densely populated areas. And then this process is hopefully gonna take on 2.4 million cubic meters of sewage waste. And then after the cleaning process, we're hoping to get 1.68 million cubic meters of treated water.
Besides, in order to treat and distribute water, we need to implement a plethora of policies. So we need to address the Nigerian government and the people that live in the area in order to put in the public toilets and the water distribution, so the faucets. And we also need to get permission for the pipeline, since it's going to be going into areas where people live and on public grounds. We also need to establish a regular public toilet waste retrieval system. So it's similar to the United States garbage pickup system weekly or even daily. We also need to request inclusion from the Kanji Dam and the Lagos Water Plant in regards to facility sharing and waste disposal, because as we go through our process of cleaning this water, we're going to have a lot of extra waste that we need to figure out where to put, and we have to hope that they will allow us to share their resources. Besides policies, we first need to get basic permissions from these places. So generally, the Nigerian government is going to have to give us permission to use both the dam and the water waste plant, because those are both publicly owned or federally owned plants. Along with Mainstream Energy Solutions and Lagos Wastewater Management Plant's permission for the dam and the plant, because they are also very involved components to this. They contributed into building it and into running it every day. For the pipeline, we will also need Nigeria's permission to create a new system on public land, because odds are it's going to displace some people. Even though we're looking for minimal displacement, we also want to find the most practical method to put the pipes. By creating a public system that impacts the majority of citizens in their daily life, we have acquired a pretty substantial list of stakeholders. Most obviously, the Nigerian government is going to be a major stakeholder, because we're planning to use public facilities and public property along with the pipe system, which is very much going to be all over. And we also, most importantly, in my opinion, need to address the Lagos State Water Corporation and the street vendors that currently sell drinking water. Because a lot of the water that Ashton mentioned before that people are getting in their daily life to drink does come from people selling it just on the streets, bottles of water. So both of these businesses or people are going to be most likely opposed to our involvement, because we're going to be getting involved in their financial business and entering their market. And what it really comes down to is addressing the fact that there are communities that are going to be affected by the pipeline being put in place and installed, and the citizens who will be the ones ingesting the water. So it really comes down to what they have to say about it as well.
All right, so with such ambitious plans, you may be wondering who will be providing this funding. And that's where we have climate change funds coming into play. So climate change funds are basically accounts set up by more developed nations to help less developed nations with adaptation and mitigation methods from climate change effects. And there's many different climate change funds. There's about 25 to 30 of them. So just to list a few examples, first of all, we have the recent 2023 COP28 Green Climate Fund, which secured $12.8 billion from 31 different countries. And we also have the Green, specifically, the Green Climate Fund says they must be invested in mitigation and adaptation with a focus on lesser developed countries and African states, which is perfect for what we're targeting here. And another example is the UNICEF Finance for Sanitation in West Africa, which more specifically is the revolving fund for sanitation, which is exactly also what we're focusing on, just making local communities cleaner and more safe to operate in. As far as revenue source, our sole source of revenue is the electricity produced from the hydroelectric dam. Within the last few years, Nigeria has imported hundreds of gigawatts of power, and therefore they're in an energy deficit. So we are looking to help them get back on track with that and have to export or import less and hopefully eventually even export to other countries with a surplus. The energy created at this hydroelectric dam will be sold to the power companies and distributed through local communities. And as far as investing our profits, we definitely want to invest all of the future profits to improve communities. So we would like to go from kind of the temporary outhouse infrastructure to more permanent and like upgraded, nicer systems for these local communities to use. And as well as the reliable sewage system so that there can be less potential for hazardous waste spills. Lastly, when financially suitable, the goal is definitely to be able to create more hydroelectric dams paired with the water treatment facilities, and that will ensure us to be able to access more clean power and water for these communities.
All right, so linking it all up together, we've come to conclusion that this is a very sustainable project. As for the environment, we've established that there are several organic aquatic organisms in the lagoon that are commercially used, and that's people's food and income sources. We've also seen that there's organic and inorganic pollutants that is potential for people's risk for health, risk for fish, shrimps, crabs, and people who eat them. We've also seen that there's heavy metals such as mercury, cadmium, as well as organic compounds, PCBs, phenols, PHH, and organotins. Sorry about that. We've seen that this project can eliminate contamination downstream. It can decrease the wastewater flooding into fresh water, and we're also using renewable resources effectively by creating a used hydroelectric facility and not creating a new one. As for public health, Nigeria is expanding, and the World Health Report indicated that globally, 23% of death occurrences and 26% of children deaths are ranging up to 4 million children under 5 every year, and it's all due to environmental factors. By creating this project, we're able to reduce that percentage. The number of diagnosed cases of diseases such as dysentery and cholera has increased in Lagos. This is due to drinking water containing chemical and bacterial pollution. We can also eliminate that probability as well. As for the economical side of the sustainability, the SirWash program improving water supply, sanitation, and hygiene services by the Government of Nigeria Nation Action Plan, the NAP, for revitalization of Nigeria water supply, sanitation, and hygiene sector. They're putting 700 million credit from the International Development Association, and it will be provided for this. This is an example of what we could use in order to create this project to come alive. For people, we are creating better lives for everyone. We're increasing accessibility for fresh water. We are also creating more job opportunities, and as for the location, and we're improving and restoring this dam. Some of the SDGs that we implemented are good health and well-being, clean water and sanitation, and affordable and clean energy. We're allowing for providing modern and efficient healthcare for everyone. We're also eliminating hazardous chemical and raw sewage dumping, and we are also creating access for electricity and shifting on our reliance away from fossil fuels. We do also have included bonus SDGs that we've used. We've used decent work and economic growth, industry renovation, infrastructure, sustainable cities and communities, and climate action. Here we're excited, and thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Do we have any questions from you guys? Any thoughts? Yeah?
So just wanted to clarify, with the outhouse style, you don't have a freshwater supply so it's not a water loop of fresh water to the outhouse that then comes from your wastewater treatment plant. It's just a single point. Then you're trucking that waste to the collection dam, and then the clean water is solely for drinking water on the outlet.
Yeah, so that's correct. So yeah, single source, no water going in there, and then that's kind of where the future infrastructure upgrades would hopefully come into play and get that to be nicer. But at first, kind of to do it cost effectively, I think it'd have to be like that. Yep. Agreed. Agreed. Yeah.
Yep.
I was just wondering, like, with the capital investment of like putting in new turbines, upgrading the wastewater treatment, and all the piping and construction that you have to do you think that the price that you would have to sell the electricity for would be cheaper than whatever fossil fuels they're importing? Because obviously, like, if you have it domestically, it's cheaper than having to import. But because of the difference in type of fuel, do you think that it would be easier for people to purchase?
So kind of looking at how much the Kanji Dam itself cost, it cost around $206 million to create the whole dam and all the infrastructure for it. And since we're kind of they have 8 of their turbines being used right now, but they have a possibility for 12. So we're not really going to be so much expanding the dam, but as much as putting in our different equipment to be able to handle sewage water. So the total price of this project will probably come out somewhere a little over $100 million. So still fairly expensive. But as Ethan mentioned, hopefully getting funding from various organizations to improve sanitation and clean energy can minimize this to make sure the price of energy doesn't go up too greatly, if at all.
Yep.
Okay, I know you guys kind of touched on this, but I had a bit of a question regarding the how you might actually, I guess, contact the public essentially about like your plan and how like essentially you might get to all these people, because you said there were I think like was it like 16 million or something in Lagos? So do you guys know like how many people you might be asking or how you might be asking them essentially? Essentially like to work with the plan.
So basically, how are you involving the general public, I guess, and like at what scale?
I think one thing that comes to mind is maybe like some kind of approach like Peace Corps, where we could have people sent out and kind of have the community being engaged in, I guess, kind of letting them know what's going on and how we could help them improve their communities, and therefore, yeah, it's like let them know that this is our project and this is where everything's going to be for you, this is how to use it, and hopefully it'll help you out a lot. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and as for the public being on board, I greatly believe that they would be all for this due to their current situation, only 55% of people having access to this clean water. Like Jackie touched on a bit, the harder stakeholders to get a hold of or to get on the side for this would be the people who make their livelihoods from selling clean water to the rest of the public. So.
All right. Any more questions from you guys? Okay, I have a question from Jake online. He said, great job on this innovative project. I'm curious about your team's journey in selecting this as your capstone project. Could you share how your group came to focus on this particular innovative, especially considering that your approach of connecting energy, this approach of connecting energy to public health?
I'll start. Okay. Yeah, so as for the decision-making process, we bounced between ideas quite a bit. We were looking at like a lot of electric vehicle stuff at first, but I feel like this idea really came to us from one of our lectures. We talked about the hydroelectricity potential in Africa, and that kind of led us to look towards like what possibilities there are there. And that led right into like doing this research. We found all these sorts of public health issues, water access, all this, and it seemed kind of perfect, like kind of went hand in hand with hydroelectric. Seemed like you could take that further and just recycle that water to be usable for the public.
Yeah. Do you want to say anything?
It's okay.
No, you could.
Go.
I was just going to say, yeah, I think it came from basically the tours, like the hydroelectric dam tours. I think we were a group that was, I'm sure everybody was pretty passionate about that and thought it was really interesting. And so we kind of like wanted to incorporate that. And at first our idea was like a lot of, problems or like areas of the questions would come up and we wouldn't know how to solve them. So this was like a kind of like, more cohesive and made more sense. And so this was our final draft, I guess. Yeah, of course.
As for public health, we've realized that this is a perfect opportunity to use that as an example. This project, I believe, is a really, really good idea, giving fresh water for people, since we've seen that we were doing our research, and on the background that we saw is that there's a lot of flooding, a lot of contamination in the waters, and a lot of health risks. So I believe this not only laid out as towards what we were trying to look for, which is a hydroelectric energy, but also it concluded towards public health as well. So it really helped everything and the environment as well.
Also, from the beginning, we knew we wanted to work with hydropower because that was a common interest on how we formed our group so quickly. But once we started looking into things such as a dam and such, we started to realize to make it cost effective, it's really looking for somewhere where there needs to be refurbishment or add-ons, because in a world of so much new renewable technology, creating a dam doesn't always sound like it would make the most sense. But refurbishing the dams that already exist and expanding them to be worth so much more than they currently are is something that I think is lacking, because everybody's looking forward to making new technologies, but we have already put so much money and power into creating the ones we already have. It would have gone to waste if not for fixing them.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's just a perfect ending to this great presentation. So thank you guys. Give them one more clap. You want to take your phone? All right. I want to invite the third group up to the podium, team Real Change. So here you go, guys. Nope. Okay. There you go.
Where's, I guess that's the camera. Okay.
Okay, so we are Real Change, which stands for Renewable Energy for Appalachian Lands. This is what we'll be going over, which is basically just the big info that we've talked about in all of our phases that we're going to go through. Just to meet us, I'm Ella.
I'm Sam.
I'm Hattie.
I'm Erin.
And I'm Purva.
So first we're going to start off with the golden circle, our what, how, and why. So for why, we are going to be working in Appalachia, which is an area in the United States, which is on this map here, which is all in the Appalachian Mountains. This area is very underrepresented in impoverished communities. They are negatively affected by the abandoned coal mines in the areas and the plants that come along with them. And these are normally very toxic and bring a lot of pollutants to the area, especially the water. And these areas, because they are impoverished, cannot afford to implement new renewable energies themselves. And they also very rarely have good energy access overall. And so therefore, they need our support to transition to a renewable energy future. How we're going to do this is we're going to incentivize big fossil fuel companies to reduce their emissions. We're going to collect these funds from the companies to help the Appalachian region become more green and use these funds to decommission coal plants and then later utilize the decommissioned areas for renewable energy. And you can see in the image all of the areas where coal plants have been in Appalachia. What we're going to do is we're going to make a federal government policy proposal, which is to collect the taxes on the companies emitting greenhouse gases, then use that tax money to allocate it to the Appalachian Regional Commission. The ARC will then contract companies to decommission the abandoned mine lands, and then the ARC will later assist in renewable energy implementation. And this is our business model canvas, which will go into all of these points in our presentation.
So phase one is the policy. So as Ella mentioned, as you can see, the black and the orange dots represent natural gas and coal power plants, and they're just abundant in the Appalachian region. These plants, as it says, these plants are showcased by those dots. And the responsible parties for these emissions are these top 5 companies that exist within the United States. The University of Massachusetts Amherst has published research regarding the corporations most responsible for greenhouse gas emissions. And this can be further broken down by the facilities of these parent corporations. As you can see, they're emitting absolute millions and millions of CO2 each and every year. So there's a lot of policy history within the United States regarding environmental action and at state levels, cap and trade policies, which essentially establish limitations to pollutant emittance. These exist primarily in California, Oregon, Washington, and then about 10 states in the Northeast. But as you can see from the map, they're effectively non-existent within the Appalachian region, which is part of what's causing the damages that we're seeing, and is why we're here to help. So the goal of the policy is to hold accountability to these facilities and these large corporations that are raking in tons of profit from supplying the energy to underrepresented and impoverished communities, but not really faced with the damages that they're doing to those communities via pollutants. The other goal is to then provide benefits back to the most impacted communities. This policy goal is also to be adaptable, so the tax amount can change and the allocation of the money can change based on the changing situation, which we will see in phases 2 and 3. And then sustainability, making more sustainable energy sources cost competitive with non-renewable sources, such as fossil fuels. So specifically, our policy is to establish a tax of each emitted unit of greenhouse gas pollution valued at the social cost of carbon. So the social cost of carbon is an estimate to the cost of the damages from 1 additional ton of carbon emitted. This estimate can range, and you can find data that a number of states value it differently depending on the models they use and the likelihoods they use of certain events occurring. But right now the EU evaluates it at about, I believe, 70 euros, which is approximately $76. And this is for each ton, so it's 1,000 kilograms of carbon emitted.
And then what would happen was these facilities would be fined for emitting these greenhouse gases, and they would be required to pay that amount for each unit that they emit, which would cause them to produce less and thus emit less, or change the way that they're operating their facilities so that they are emitting less altogether.
So the second phase of our project would be decommissioning these abandoned mine lands. So what is decommissioning? Just to give like a brief definition of it, it is the process of shutting down a facility and cleaning it of contaminants to prepare it for future use. This may include checking the water quality before and after and determining what quality you want to have at the end, so how clean the water will be. Especially important for our case, since a lot of these waters around are very polluted by the coal plants. Another factor that is important to be considered would be groundwater resurgence and flooding. As you are changing and redeveloping an area, you are changing the way that the water floods, and you need infrastructure for that to prevent flooding. And these consulting companies would perform these tests and a variety of other tests to ensure that the areas are clean and safe. And we would be focused on trying to find local consulting companies so that we can also help with the local economies. And here are some of the basic steps towards decommissioning. The first step was, as I mentioned in the previous slide, would be planning, and that would be the consulting companies planning schedules, what tests to do, when to do it, and then physical and radiological characterization, which would be sort of mapping out the site. This would be done in a software such as Geospatial Information Systems, or GIS, and this would be helpful so that they know what to expect and what the land looks like before actually going onto the land. So then the third step would be decontamination, which would be just cleaning out the area. Dismantling and demolition. So for the coal lands, maybe closing up the mine shaft. If there's any plants or facilities there, taking those down. Preparation for reuse would be like replanting the area, making it clean. And then the final survey and release would be, again, from the Appalachian Regional Commission. They would come down and look back at the land to see if this can be feasible for the long term. And the costs. Unfortunately, the United States has estimated that to decommission every single abandoned mine land in the US, it would be around $11.3 billion, which is a lot of money. So because of our situation, we have decided to start with priority 1 abandoned mine lands, which are defined as areas that are extremely affected by coal mining, and it is an actual threat to their safety at the moment. So we would consider these AMLs in the Appalachian area that are labeled primary 1. So this would like lower the amount of abandoned mine lands we're focusing on, which would lower the cost. And other ways to lower costs would be to source our materials locally and our jobs locally. And just in this visual, it just shows the 5 top areas with abandoned mine lands, 4 of them being within Appalachia. So Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Kentucky. And the 3 bars, the darkest bar would be the priority 1. So as you can see, there's a bit less priority 1 compared to the priority 2. So trying to tackle the priority 1 abandoned mine lands first would be a lot better. And then if we have more tax money, more surplus, we would go on to the priority 2 abandoned mine lands, and et cetera.
So, and now we're going to be moving on to phase 3 and the future work we would do after decommissioning the lands. So, as for applying our surplus funds, one of the first things we were looking at was implementing some solar farms on the lands. So, solar energy is going to be the most cost effective, which is really important for communities that are struggling economically, like in the Appalachian region. Solar panels are also easier to install and the least complicated renewable energy source to implement here. The maintenance and installation of the panels would create jobs as well, And this energy source is long-lasting and would provide continuous benefits over the years. So here we have a couple articles showing similar things that are being done now. So in Kentucky and Virginia, they have started planning to make solar farms on decommissioned coal land. Solar is really promising for these lands, and multiple companies are mentioned in these articles that are really excited and hoping to work on the projects. And so it would be pretty easy to kind of get a competitive price for work and labor on the project. So we have some other options as well. Solar isn't the only thing we were considering. So for geothermal, a positive of that would be that it's constant. It doesn't really depend on weather or require waste like biofuel does. A cool thing about geothermal as well is that the Biden administration recently allocated almost $500 million towards green energy, and they were considering looking into implementing some geothermal energy here in the US. Biofuel is another option, and that would be a good resource for Appalachian farming communities. And this would benefit them directly because the agricultural waste that the community produces could benefit them directly by contributing to green energy on a local level. Then we also have wind energy. Turbines would be beneficial in such a highly windy area, but they're not the most realistic because of the mountainous terrain. And then one of the reasons we focus more on solar is that an issue that all three of these have is they're not quite as easy to implement as solar. Building the factories and setting up the infrastructure would kind of complicate the process a little bit more. So, and then we have a concern of what if we run out of money, right? Like, since we're basing our funding on taxes, what if the companies start cooperating and instead of paying the taxes, they lower their emissions? Well, first and foremost, our goal is to help local communities as well as reduce the usage of fossil fuels. So if we stop receiving this tax money prior to building on the decommissioned sites, we've still achieved our purpose. Encouraging companies to be more sustainable on their own would still successfully lower emissions and create more sources of green energy in the Appalachian region.
Now that we've thought about the 3 phases of our project, it's also really important to think about, what is the impact of the work? So one way to measure that is using the Sustainable Development Goals. So the first goal that we looked at was affordable and clean energy. We know that, the largest contributors to fossil fuels are being taxed for their emissions. So this de-incentivizes them from increasing their carbon emissions. The money then gets reinvested back into the communities, and the surplus ends up going to the clean energy projects that Erin mentioned, like the solar farms, but also potentially biofuels and geothermal. The next goal is decent work and economic growth. We're able to revitalize the economy by focusing in on those local businesses. When we're working with the Appalachian Regional Commission, they're going to find these local businesses and consultants that can do this work and create renewable energy jobs when these abandoned mines are later turned into potential solar farms. Next one is responsible consumption and production. Being able to first repurpose the abandoned sites and then turn them into clean energy developments closes that life cycle and allows us to think about, just not ending that cycle with these abandoned sites, but also how can we use them in the future. And finally, life below water is a really crucial impact. Acid mine drainage is a huge issue with the abandoned coal mines because the sulfur from the coal and the rocks mixes with the water and creates sulfuric acid. So we would be able to see increases in fish populations once that level of acid mine drainage was reduced, and increases in general aquatic life. Another way that we can measure impact other than the SDGs is looking at something called the sustainability complex. So on the range from an individual to global impact, where does our project lie? So because the funding does go to the Appalachian Regional Commission, the projects are developing economic opportunities for people within the community. So it's very community-based, community-led projects. And of course, the stakeholders are also mainly the community members, so their perspective and input would be really valuable. We'd also be focusing on removing the biohazards with the decommissioning, so really making sure that the things that are polluting these communities are removed. Additionally, any developments that would directly benefit the community would be focused on, and again, we're empowering these local businesses. So really, this is a community-led project, and I think the policy would really reflect that intention. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, go ahead.
Thank you so much, guys. Do you have any questions? Yep. Let's start with Ian.
So, is there any concern that by like taxing the CO2 emissions that they exceed, that might just turn back into increasing the power prices to kind of offset that, or by cutting back elsewhere, like maybe possibly the lowering of, like wages for less skilled workers?
Mine goes with that. Can I add on? I was gonna ask a similar thing about when you have these policy taxes. It's likely that the corporations will go to their employees and say, you should protest this so that your employment or your salary isn't affected. And for a lot of people in Appalachia, they've been their livelihood has been tied to coal or fossil fuels like through generations of their family. So I was wondering, maybe like to mitigate that, if you had any ideas on like a program that could kind of transition people from coal employment to like renewable energy, like to educate them on like technical skills or anything that's required, so that as these like shut down, where do those employees go, I guess?
Yeah, so that's definitely a concern, but first of all, the goal is that fact that probably a lot of these companies could clean up their emissions at a lower cost than what the social cost of carbon is, which would just incentivize them to be more conscious of what they're doing as opposed to just getting a free pass. Another goal would be the fact that, like I mentioned, it would make renewable energies more cost competitive with non-renewables right now. What's happening is because we're not taxing any costs to the damages that greenhouse gas pollutants are doing to the environment, we're essentially giving fossil fuels a huge subsidy. So maybe we could kind of market that towards better usage of investing towards renewable energy and other things like that to get people to understand like the transition more. But with regards to like coal plants, we wouldn't be necessarily putting those people out of a job because we're working on the abandoned lands. But somebody else.
Yeah, so this was also something we had talked about in concern for like our surplus thing, and honestly part of the reason we didn't include it was we were worried we were spreading ourselves a little too thin for a 15-minute presentation. But one thing we had discussed was maybe building a building or some sort of school on one of the more central decommissioned plots of land in order to have an educational program that kind of teaches people how to maintain and work with solar energy and renewable energy sources that we would be putting up, so that we would be providing them jobs working on the facilities that we'd be building. And if not that, we had talked about working with libraries and community colleges to offer classes there instead of making our own building.
Any other questions from you guys? All good? All right. Then I bring on the online question. So Jake says, thank you for a great project. Do you have any information on how long it generally takes for land reclamation to take place?
Honestly, like, it really just depends, which kind of is like a bad answer, I feel like, but there's not really a way to know. I guess in a perfect world, if you could get, you know, the planning and like if the land isn't already being owned by someone, if it's like completely abandoned, owned by the government, then like we could start it pretty fast. But obviously if that abandoned mine land has been transferred to other ownership, it would take a bit more time to communicate with the landowner. But obviously once we are able to like start the project and we have the ability to like access the land, it shouldn't take that long in terms of like planning and stuff, so.
Thank you. I also have like a thought on the timing, and again, like a great project. Thank you guys. Yeah, I was just wondering, like, maybe you touched upon it, or it's maybe you cannot answer it, but how long or how difficult it takes or it is to get such a policy with the taxes like through? Is it done on like a national level? And yeah.
Just because the Appalachian region covers a lot of states. But the Biden administration just passed an infrastructure bill that dedicated some portion of money to this, so it could happen in a similar fashion. And I think a key selling point to this is the fact that you're going to be improving those people's livelihoods. Like Megan mentioned, they are tied to these coal farms, but they're not coming back. So instead of letting them sit and like feel sad about the fact, is like guiding them towards a new direction that will improve their quality of life. So I think it just depends on that. And currently some of the people in government are sitting in these congressional seats that are kind of most influential in making these decisions. So I think they would be happy to see that money coming into their state.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Let's give it up. Awesome, guys. Thank you. All right. So, last but not least, obviously, we have Team Yellowstone. So, yeah, give it up for the last presentation. Yeah. Okay, guys, maybe before we start, if we can, we're going to say goodbye to Rosa. She's leaving earlier, so let's take a moment. Don't make her cry. Yeah, guys, you can just get ready.
No, you can just do it because it'll just be the space bar. So you can just do the slide once you're done.
Bye. All right.
Oh, this is so weird.
You guys can just go when you're ready.
All right. Hello, everyone. Today, our project, or our Capstone Project, will be focusing on the utilization of geothermal energy for the production of biofuel. So just to get started with our consulting firm, we'd like you to meet the team.
I'm Megan Pritchard. I'm the CEO of our company, and I go to Virginia Tech.
And my name is Brian Labor. I'm the COO, and I go to San Diego State.
I'm Brett Schultz. I'm the CFO, and I go to the University of New Hampshire.
I'm Jackson Andrew. I'm the CTO, and I go to Virginia Tech as well.
And I'm Bryce Bear Taylor, and I'm the CSO, and I go to Binghamton University.
So now getting into it with our introduction, we chose to focus this idea in the Pacific Northwest region of the United States. And we decided this because this region of the US exists on a large convergent boundary and subduction zone. and historically has had a lot of geothermal activity as well as volcanic activity, which is kind of hand in hand. However, as of today, their geothermal production is extremely limited. Less than 50% of Washington and Oregon's electricity is currently comprised of renewable energies. However, we do know that historically these two states, along with pretty much the entire West Coast, have been historically more open to the idea of environmentally progressive change for the better, which is why we hope to kind of introduce our idea to this region. And currently, just to kind of restate, this region's resources are being extremely underutilized, and we'll be going into that with the next couple slides. If you look at this map here, this is a map of Washington with their geothermal potential. We'll also have one of Oregon in a later slide if you just want to kind of look at that and see exactly what kind of potential we're looking at with this region. So now going into the golden circle.
Thank you. It's really this development and the fact that Washington, our research has shown that Washington and Oregon have the ability to increase their renewable energy capabilities. This is really our why. And we want to help them increase their renewable energy capabilities through integrating more geothermal energy and more alternative fuel technologies. More specifically, we want to create a consulting firm where we help already existing geothermal power plants in the Pacific Northwest use CO2 created in their processes to create biomass material. Moving on to our business model and business model canvas and economic model, it's pretty intuitive. We are basically functioning as a consulting firm and working with geothermal power plants where they're paying us a fee, and we're helping them with the logistics involved in helping them turn CO2 from their processes into biomass material. We will be charged a rate based on the size and scale of the project. Later in this presentation, we'll talk about the financials associated with our idea as well as the projects we'll be helping with. And we've found through a very comprehensive financial analysis that we can achieve a payback period in under 4 years.
So for our numbers in this presentation, which we'll be going into later, we decided to base them on the case study we did of Klamath Falls in Oregon. It's located kind of on the bottom left of that map right there, if you can see it. And it's a very geothermally active area of the state. So just to begin, this town first started exploring geothermal power by setting up a 1.2 to 1.6 megawatt capacity facility, which initially powered 27 buildings in the town, consisting of commercial businesses, government facilities, and then also sidewalk and bridge melting systems. And they most recently also expanded their geothermal explorations to install a new 10 megawatt capacity geothermal facility, which they did in partnership with a company called Kalina Energy. So yeah, the new power that they've installed is currently being supplied to some homeowners and local businesses for heating. But we believe that introducing the production of biofuel could also bring in more profits for utility companies in the area, and also kind of help them broaden their reach to explore other advantages that could come with geothermal energy production.
So a little background on the biofuel that we've chosen to create. The inputs for this would be the electricity from the geothermal plant, as well as the carbon dioxide that is in the non-compressible gases produced as a byproduct or waste from the geothermal plant, and then water that we use with the electricity to produce hydrogen gas. So this is a basic overview. We'll go into detail in a minute, but the final products will be liquid methanol fuel, as well as whatever energy is left over, because we're limited by the carbon dioxide from the plant. So in detail, the compressible gases come in as CO2 and hydrogen sulfide, so you need to separate those. You would do those via a distillation method, which that's the process there. Hydrogen gas is produced from water and electricity through electrolysis, just with one electrolysis cell. And then the rest of the methanol production would be e-methanol production, or electromethanol, basically methanol from renewable energy, and it would be done via CO2 hydrogenation, and those 3 steps are kind of all in that process right there. And then to catalyze the reaction of the carbon dioxide and hydrogen, you can use these types of catalysts, either copper, zinc oxide, or aluminum oxide are most common.
Okay, to go into the actual statistics and feasibility of this financially, we had to make a couple assumptions based around the power plant in the area, as well as some generic power plant operations. We're assuming that water is not a limiting factor for chemical processing, so we did not put any cost on the water. Now we're assuming a 96% efficiency conversion from CO2 to methanol. We have a 35% conversion rate from methanol to the power grid. We are calculating our values based off a 1.5 megawatt capacity geothermal power plant, which already exists in the area. We are also calculating costs of electricity with a 15 cents per hour, which is the standard in Oregon. We did not factor tax credits into our calculations, and we're assuming a 90% capacity factor of the geothermal power plant for the purposes of megawatt hour calculations. Overall, we got some pretty good values. We have a 0.175 million kilograms of e-methanol created per year, which if sold wholesale, would give us $3.5 million per year. Going into the actual CO2 savings, we are assuming that the amount of power produced through a geothermal, any power plant in general, if they were to use coal, general fuel, or natural gas instead of our methanol, so we are subtracting our methanol, so their CO2 emissions by our CO2 emissions, they still have a massive excess of CO2 per year. So from coal, we are expecting to save 439,000 pounds of CO2 per year. From general fuel, 334,000, and from natural gas, 216,000.
So for the current feasibility of this project, we know that biofuels will likely be a key player for phasing out fossil fuels. So this is an opportunity for companies to get a head start on that, get their toes in, as well as geothermal is a very local source of energy, but biofuel can be transported, so they can increase their reach. They're also using the CO2 produced from the geothermal plant is just a waste product, and now they are able to generate more money from that by turning that into a methanol fuel. Then this generates enough revenue to justify the capital expenses. If you want very rough estimates, basing our values off of other bioplants in the industry, we estimate about 15 million capital investment and a payback period between 4 and 7 years. That is over a 20-year lifetime of the plant, the biofuel plant. And then guarantee of long-term return on investment from those values. Flexibility for the future. If we initially targeted this electromethanol for cars and like personal vehicle use, but if electric vehicles are highly favored over alternative fuels, this methanol could still be sold to shipping companies, and there will still be a huge market there. And if that somehow degrades, we can produce the geothermal energy as well, because the source of the geothermal energy is not expected to degrade over time. That's going to be there for a long time, as long as we replace the equipment at the plant itself. But that borehole with the heat is always going to be there.
All right. So now we're kind of going to get into our sustainability, and specifically with our sustainable development goals. So we found, at least, that our project is kind of aligning with the goals that you kind of see over here. I kind of like to think of it as a lot of these goals are pretty connected. So if you start, I guess, with your infrastructure, right? We're looking at pre-existing geothermal power plants across the Pacific Northwest, and emerging ones. Just as we heard in another presentation before, geothermal is a growing field as well. So we would definitely be targeting a lot of new industry and obviously that infrastructure that's being built there. And what those essentially those industries are doing is they're obviously producing clean and affordable energy using that geothermal power plant. And now with our addition of the biofuel process using their excess carbon, we will be able to produce affordable and clean energy in a new form as well, so that they have versatility like that. And sustainable cities and communities, these are the buyers essentially, just like you saw with the Klamath Falls. They're using that energy to power these communities sustainably instead of using other alternatives such as like coal burning and stuff like that. And overall, the entire cycle is kind of similar to that SDG 12, where we're trying to be responsible with the amount we're using. We're trying to use the excess carbon dioxide that's being emitted by these geothermal power plants responsibly and not just let it fly into the atmosphere, even though it's much less carbon dioxide used compared to some of these bigger fossil fuel burning type companies as well. So yeah, we do have the potential to essentially divert this carbon dioxide by not just letting it fly into the atmosphere and actually using it. Specifically, when we're talking about our sustainability complex, we're definitely falling more into the regional category, especially early on, as we are talking about the Pacific Northwest and a lot of geothermal potential they have there. But essentially our structure for what we're trying to do can be applied to essentially any geothermal plant that already exists, because what we're doing is essentially just adding this biofuel technology on top of it. So we could essentially use this idea, or use these ideas to expand to any national or maybe even global, I guess, geothermal power plants. So yeah, in conclusion, we're talking about the Pacific Northwest's great renewable potential and the increasing field, I guess, of geothermal that's going on there. And we want to make sure that they're using that as efficiently as possible. So we're talking about especially being efficient with the waste that they produce. So that's kind of what we're talking about there. For our company or itself, I guess our consulting firm, it would definitely be a low startup and low operational cost as well, as we are the ones kind of connecting and giving these guidance to these geothermal power plants and essentially helping them make the right decisions and give themselves more of a profit, but also being more sustainable with their waste as well. And lastly, our ideas are obviously feasible and practical, because we're trying to maximize the potential of these things. And in this growing field that is essentially so prevalent to a lot of the increasing energy needs in the US, this could be something that could provide more energy while essentially utilizing some of the pre-existing and developing infrastructure that we have. So yeah, these are our references. You can't really see it actually because it's blocked by the video thing here, but we have a hyperlink to, we did a lot of math for this, for especially some of the economic stuff, and so we have a link to all of those calculations essentially. And so if you want to see that, obviously you can take the presentation and all that stuff. And thank you so much for watching, and if you have any questions, please do ask.
Thank you guys so much. Do we have already? Yes. Here we go.
For the hydrogenation plant, do you have an idea of what the capital capex for a typical unit? Because when you talk about those methanol production rates, I mean that's essentially so rough order of magnitude.
So we don't have an exact rough estimate, but we based on the amount of carbon dioxide produced by the geothermal plant, as opposed to a standalone e-methanol plant, we're producing a lot less methanol. So we aren't completely full scale, but we also aren't small scale compared to if we found values for if a farmer was going to start producing e-methanol out of their carbon dioxide, they could spend about 18,000 on like small scale equipment. So it's less than full scale, but our values definitely aren't exact.
Thank you. Any other questions from you guys? All right. Let's turn to the computer. So maybe I will go first. Thank you guys for the last presentation. It was really nice. I'm just wondering about, because you are focusing on a specific area with already existing geothermal power plants, and usually like a lifetime of such a power plant, then, or at least a borehole, is maybe about 50 years, give or take. Is there a possibility of drilling new boreholes in the area? Are they planning to? And how is that? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's where I could go back to them as well. We included the maps that kind of showed the geothermal potential of the area, just to show, I think on another slide as well, it mentioned a lot of this hasn't actually been explored or developed yet. This is just general mapping using GIS. So there's still a lot of potential for new developments to take place if they want to expand in this region. It's not just specifically, like, just to answer your question, yeah, there are a lot of opportunities for them to explore new operations.
We also know that the companies themselves are looking to expand, as they just did recently. They increased from about 1.5 megawatts and added a whole nother 10 megawatts. So it seems that it's working out for them and that they want to continue investing in the future. So we will be able to drill more boreholes.
And yeah. Okay. So from Jake, he says, I wanted to follow up and state that this is a great project that really shows the great potential of geothermal in the US. I think that's it. Any more questions? Any more questions from you guys? All right. So let's give it up one more time for our last group. Thank you guys so much. Yes.
Is there more?
Yeah.
Okay.
We need to end the live. It's a live feed. All right. So let's have... Okay, guys. So I just wanted to congratulate you all, of course, for these amazing projects and presentations. It's been really nice to spend the last couple of days with you and see how you were able to form your groups pretty early on and kind of take an idea and create these amazing solutions and ideas, even though there were obstacles and very stiff schedule on our behalf. So that was amazing. So thank you for that. And I think this kind of shows us how a small kind of group of people can manage to create awesome ideas if we have, you know, passion for it and passion for sustainable future. So thank you guys for that. And I, of course, encourage all of you to take your ideas further, or at least you can, you know, take the ideas or whatever, and also use all the knowledge you've gained in the presentations, like at the university and such. Especially I can see like most of the projects kind of relate to the things that you have learned here. So that's also kind of nice for us to see that you actually were taking something in. So that's awesome. Learning something new. But yeah, like once again, just give yourselves like a little clap and thank you all. And of course, yeah, thank you for those who are online for tuning in. And yeah, have a great day. All right. Okay, thank you guys. Woo!